Okay, so the second defense that the owner might bring to the table, Applebaum's going to call deference to authority. So if these roles as owners and workers, but in this case the owner, if these roles have moral value, that is, they promote valued ends, like prosperity, for example, then, so goes this argument, that the participants are obligated then to defer to authority and comply with its rules, right? I mean, if the market system promotes a valued end, which is prosperity, then that is the grounding then that we ought to accept the way that system works, which would mean to defer to the authority of the owner in this case. The owner is going to ship the plant overseas, and the worker has an obligation on this view to accept that, to comply with the rules of the market system. And this would include withholding judgment about the legitimacy of the system that prescribes certain roles, right? And we should really say here withholding a negative judgment, right? That you wouldn't be able to make a negative judgment about the legitimacy of the system. The worker then is obligated to accept that market systems create roles for owners that include harming the workers as part of the system. So here is the worker, and on this view then the worker says, I accept my fate. If the worker says that, we would say, we're going to introduce a new term here, that the worker sees the system as legitimate, right? And the owner, of course, is going to want to say, well, yeah, this is what it means for workers, because the whole system promotes a valued end, prosperity, and that system prescribes a role for owners to sometimes lay off workers in the pursuit of the valued end, economic prosperity. Then the worker is sort of obligated to be okay with that, right? And so the worker then is, if the worker is okay with that, we're going to say that the worker sees the system as legitimate. All right. Now let's nail down what legitimacy is. We're going to define legitimacy as a kind of loyalty, a reservoir of goodwill that allows the institutions of government, or in this case, private institutions, to go against what people may want at the moment without suffering debilitating consequences. Right? What would debilitating consequences be? Well, maybe the workers would rise up, and cause trouble and rebel. So legitimacy is this kind of loyalty. Now, in this case, it's framed in terms of government action, but here it's the action of an owner of a business affecting the fate of a worker. We can think of legitimacy. It gives a cushion of support against losses perceived to be unfair. Well, we can look at it two ways here. If the worker says, I accept my fate, then maybe the worker is claiming that it is fair. But even the worker might accept their fate and still think it's unfair, yet do nothing else, just kind of accept it. So the worker could still see this as somehow sort of unfair, but if they accept it, we're going to say the worker is seeing the system as legitimate. Now, another way to think about legitimacy, that personal morality is replaced by one's duty to obey orders from a superior, like in this case, the business owners. Legitimate authorities define the boundaries of appropriate behavior in a situation. Appropriate behavior becomes internalized as a set of social norms. So from this viewpoint, if the worker is seeing the market system as legitimate, then what that means is even when the worker is getting harmed by the factory moving overseas, the worker is going to accept that, right? Not rebel against the system. The norm of behavior here is to, all right, got to go find a new job. That's the norm of behavior in the market system. All right. Now let's add another definition, and that is of power. What do we mean by power? Power is the ability to shape gains and losses of others by threat, use of coercion to deter undesired behavior, or by promising rewards. And we can say that power is legitimate when the decisions by authorities are perceived to be valid enough to comply with. And the ability to secure compliance is a measure of legitimacy. So let's look at our situation. Here's the owner. The owner might say, well, if you accept a wage cut, I will not move the factory, right? The worker says, okay, I see you are responding to market forces. See, so here we say the owner would be in a position of higher power than the worker, right? They have the power to shape, in this case, the wage of the worker, or even the job of the worker if they decide to move it overseas. And the worker now is recognizing this power, right? And so we would say that the worker is seeing the system as legitimate, that the owner is sort of permitted to sort of make these demands, you might say, on the worker. If the worker accepts this, we would say that we've got a situation of compliance. But the worker might not accept it, right? And so if the worker rebels, here they are, they're tearing up the factory. Oops, the owner is not looking good here. Here the workers are saying, no, the system is not legitimate, right? This was not right. Maybe they want to politically organize. That would be then low compliance, right? So if the workers accept their situation, then we're going to say there's high compliance, right? They see the system as legitimate. They will comply with the system, even if the system has given them some tough information here, some tough choices. Low compliance would be the case where the workers do not see the system as legitimate. They might organize, they might rebel, and that low compliance then is a measure of legitimacy of the system. Now, legitimate decisions are entitled to be obeyed, right, by virtue of who made the decision. It could be a respected elder, elected official. Again, we're now just speaking in generalities, or how it was made, maybe unbiased authority, democratic process, response to market forces. So this is just some information about power and legitimacy. But here, in this case, we're focusing on the business example, the owner and worker. So we can think of then the idea of this is the person in the legitimate position of power, right? And if the worker recognizes it, they're going to accept that situation. Of course, workers might not always see that the owners are making legitimate decisions, right? And so then we have the case of low compliance rebellion.